Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin back again, and today we are going to be doing another reaction to a surah. This is Surah 75, Recitation for Al-Qiyamah. Now this is like our 7th, 8th, or 9th one of these that we've done. We're working our way through the Quran. The hope is that one day we could actually react to all 114. To be pretty cool. I don't know if anyone on YouTube has ever even done that before, but this is one of the shorter ones, and one of the things we picked up from the last one we did is that they're not all written in chronological order. I think on the last one we sounded kind of ignorant because we were saying, well, at the end of Muhammad's reign, he might have been, thinking differently, but people were like, no, they're not in chronological order. They're kind of like, spread out. So that's just a side note. Now we know that. We know that now, and we continue on. So anyway, we'll get into this. Let's do it.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. La uqsimu biyawmil qiyamah. ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة أيحسب الإنسان أن لن نجمع عظامه بلى قادرين على أن نسوي بنانه بل يريد الإنسان ليفجر أمامه يسأل أيان يوم القيامة فإذا برق البصر وخسف القمر وجمع الشمس والقمر يقول الإنسان يومئذ أين المفر كلا لا وزر إلى ربك يومئذ المستقر ينبأ الإنسان يومئذ بما قدم وأخر بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى معاذيره لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه ثم إن علينا بيانه كلا بل تحبون العاجلة وتذرون الآخرة وجوه يومئذ ناظرة إلى ربها ناظرة ووجوه يومئذ باسرة تظن أن يفعل بها فاقرة كلا إذا بلغت التراقي وقيل من راق وظن أنه الفراق والتفت الساق بالساق إلى ربك يومئذ المساق فلا صدق ولا صلى ولكن كذب وتولى ثم ذهب إلى أهله يتمطى أولى لك فأولى ثم أولى لك فأولى أيحسب الإنسان أن يترك سدى ألم يك نطفة من مني يمنى ثم كان علقة فخلق فسوى فجعل منه الزوجين الذكر والأنثى أليس ذلك بقادر على الموتى.
All right. Well, for the person who performed that or did that recitation, good job. There was quite a bit in there. I wrote, if you saw me looking down, it was because I had my Quran here and I wanted to highlight a couple verses, things that stuck out. Now, again, anyone who watches our channel knows that we don't like I personally don't believe in some exterior higher order being that watches over us. And so when we talk about these things, we're talking about it from our understandings and our perspectives that kind of come out of it. So for those of you who are into that type of thing, then welcome. Anyone's welcome. And you got a Quran here? Some people like to come and correct us. Yeah. So there's one of the things that kind of stuck out was kind of in the first beginning verses. So this seemed to me that it was kind of talking about a resurrection. So I'm assuming if you're coming from a religious Islamic perspective, you're thinking about the resurrection in the next life, I guess. Coming back, you'll be brought back to life. And maybe I'm assuming wrong here, but there were some descriptors in here that were talking about, does man think that we will not reassemble his bones? Yes, indeed, we are able to reconstruct his fingertips, but man wants to deny what is ahead of him. But here's the thing, depending on who you are, I would say, like for me, I look at this from an egoic perspective. The ego wants to go on. I think for the most part, maybe not all people, maybe some people who are suffering from some mental health issues want to end. But I'm saying, I think on average though, you ask most people, if you said, do you want to be forever? Do you want to consistently go on? The ego side of a human is going to be, yes, I want to go on. I want to continue on.
And just briefly, what is the ego?
When I'm talking about the ego, I'm talking about like the false illusory self that is constructed by the brain that's going on. The character in the brain that gives itself an identity and thinks that I am this thing here that exists.
You say the illusory false self, but for most people it would be what they believe is the realist version of themselves.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying is an illusion, and the thing that has this desire to begin with to resist.
And then wants to continue to go on.
It wants to resist the reality of impermanence.
Yes.
Wants to resist that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to spin off of that?
No.
No? Okay. So my comment on that was that I think that that's a thing that people want to continue. They want that.
It's a survival drive.
So that's the opposite of what I'm reading here, which says man wants to deny what is ahead of him. If someone thought that they had the possibility of living on for eternity, I think that most people would say, sign me up. What
do I got to do?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I kind of noticed in there. The next verse that I highlighted as this was kind of going on was verse 20 that said, alas, you love the fleeting life. Again, it's different, I think, for everyone, right? I think there are some people when they come to the end of their life, if they've lived a good life, they might be like, okay, I've done enough here. We've talked about this. A good life would be someone at the end who's like, okay, I've had enough. I did everything here I came here to do, and it's good and it's okay. And then I think there's other people by the end of it who might be like, I don't want to die, or someone who goes too early, or something like that. It depends on who you are.
Isn't that an interesting paradox? Because the person that doesn't want to die, I would assume, is actually having a good life. I don't want to go yet. I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
That's too bad. The person that wants to live can't have it. And then the person that's like, glory, glory, hallelujah, I'm ready to go, God, probably had a kind of a crappy time.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How things like that play out.
A lot of things are dependent, right? These are kind of, I don't know if they're written as like, the verses here sometimes is like, this is the case the majority of the time. Is that how it's supposed to be read? Is like, the average says that this is typically how people think about things. Or does it take into account the possibility for variations in the way that different people kind of view some of these things, right? And that's all I'll say. Those I know I had some other stuff here, but I'm sure.
Why not? Why don't we go into the other stuff?
Well, the last verse. Well, the second last verse says, "And he made him two sexes, the male and the female." And me, I was just kind of thinking, like, if you're depending on how liberal you are, you might be like, "Hey, there's different, there's different pronouns, there's different, sexes. What about hermaphrodite and other, things that come out?" That's very kind of like a very absolute statement there in the end.
Or hyper masculine men or hyper whatever.
Yeah, I did a lot of talking.
Let's not get into the gender stuff right here because just for reasons.
Yeah,
with a capital R. Like I always say lately, just be careful not to believe anything. Like I always say these days, careful with all this stuff. It's all fun and games, but careful with any religion that's out there. Don't go believe in it. That's what I always say. Because you weren't there. You don't know. If I really want to control someone, one of the things, like if I was like a psychopath and I really was like obsessed with controlling things, especially if I was ideologically possessed and puppeted and I had to transfer my possessive ideologies onto something else, one, I would get them young. You got to find people that are super young because they're more influential at a young age. And brutality, if you can traumatize certain facts into somebody, they're very hard to break later on in life. They're going to have a hard time unbelieving. One of the first seeds of awakening for me was probably over a decade ago. And somebody said, "You ever try unbelieving something?" And this was to a Christian that this was said. I was a Christian at the time. And so careful with your beliefs. Because when you get into the realm of belief, man, very hard to unbelieve when the time comes to unbelieve it.
Yeah. Well, maybe just to off of what you said there kind of about religions, it doesn't just have to be religion. It could be any ideology because you said ideologies, right? Yeah. So be careful with your beliefs about all ideologies.
Oh, yeah.
It's not necessarily, this is outside of the realm of just religion. This is in all facets of life. So beyond believing things, what if you're saying don't believe something, is there something else you're pointing at when you say that? Like, what's the other, if you're not doing this, what are you doing?
Do you need to believe in your breath for it to happen? Do you need to believe in your heartbeat for it to beat? I would say start somewhere there. Belief is like an activity. You have to actively do it. You have to justify. You have to fragment. You have to delude yourself. You have to deny certain aspects of reality. You have to start differentiating, applying a lot of judgment, categorizing like crazy. And you're making grand assumptions. You're making tons of assumptions, and this behavior occurs long after you've already found food and shelter. Your needs could already be fundamentally met, and you're possessed by philosophy and rationality and beliefs. And what they end up doing is they end up causing extreme behavior. They end up, in the name of something that is labeled as love, end up causing problems and harm and misunderstandings and suffering for you and for everyone. And so I'm saying, it got us to the show, especially when times were more desperate. When I drive through the town I live in, I can spot a church everywhere. There's churches everywhere. And
most of them are empty.
And now they're combining because their numbers are so low. This stuff got us to the show, but we are thriving, and we've got a fertile ground here to do some amazing things on planet Earth. And I'm not against regarding any kind of philosophy, regarding any kind of religion, but the act of going into self-hypnosis and deluding yourself into believing things minus any critical thought, to me, leads to suffering. And you say, well, what else is there? The answer is apparent. The answer is just do that. Just don't do that, and then the answer will overwhelm you. It'll be so obvious it's the only thing left. There will be people that say what I'm saying is madness. That's part of the safeguard. It's things. These things got to protect themselves, and they'll lash out when they're threatened. But the answer is that it'll unveil itself to you. Maybe even the answer of God. Maybe even true theosis. Maybe even true understanding of, the nature of God. Maybe. Don't go believe in anything. Just maybe listen to what I've said here and start by unbelieving everything.
All right, we'll leave it there. Hopefully you guys liked our reaction on this one. We'll continue this series as we go along. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share us with a friend, and everyone till next time.
Stay spiritual.